The crazy part, that day, when officials tried to bury this little girl, the riot of 2,000 gathered around the cemetery tried to prevent her from being buried. They were afraid that her corpses would poison all the surroundings in the land. In 1980s, in Brazil, two friends, one aged 19, another 22, had been planning for months to break into the premises of a half-demolished site which was guarded by the authorities. Something was there. Only few knew about it. The crazy part, not even the authorities had any idea what was buried beneath the surface of dust and the rust. They were just following the protocols on a disputed land, and others had been waiting for the final court orders. The ruined building was a private clinic, and when the partnership was dissolved, immediately one of the partners submitted a request to relocate the clinic to a new premises, which was about 4.5 kilometers or 2.8 miles south of existing facility. The biggest issue, even though half of the building was destroyed, some of the medical equipment were still there resting under the dust. While the building was being destroyed, court orders came into action, and they had to stop everything. This is why some of the parts of the building remained untouched. It was the worst ever dispute between the clinic and the landowners. Against Dr. Carlos, the then director of the Institute of Insurance for Civil Servants, Pasco Taniguchi, involved police department and prevented the doctor from accessing the property. Seeing this frustration, co-owner or Dr. Carlos knew what could possibly happen, and he must warn the headquarters this time directly. So he wrote a letter to the headquarters informing them the situation, but they kept silent. 22 years old Roberto de Santos Alves and 19 years old Wagner Mota Pereira were learning every single move of this god on one specific Sunday morning, 13th of September 1987. This god didn't show up. Both friends broke into the premises, exploring each room carefully so no one could see them. Restlessly working for the whole day, they found nothing. One of them suggested to take a short break, since they couldn't find the treasure. But what they could do to save the day, they should extract these machines and resell them to make some profit. They started to disassemble and extract the machines. Several times they injured their hands. While they were doing all this, they could extract this very small little capsule-shaped object along with other extracted material. At that point, they got everything and left the premises. They were so tired, hungry. One of them suggested to go back to his home, cook something to eat, then rest and see what they could do the next day with these things. Agreeing, and upon reaching home, they started to feel so dizzy, extremely tired. So something was leftover food from the other night. They had their meal and said goodbye to each other, and one of them, he left for his home. The other morning, they started to vomit and noticed their hands are being swollen, but they also developed diarrhea. One of them decided to have a check by the local doctors, and the doctor diagnosed him with skin allergic and food poisoning. He was advised to take a rest for a week, but the other one didn't rest. Instead of rest, he kept working on the capsule in his backyard, and he started to further disassemble the capsule. Now, the capsule is very small, like 2 inches of long and 1.8 inches of thick. He started to use a screwdriver to disassemble it, and accidentally he punctured it. A small amount of the powder came out, but he thought that maybe this is a gunpowder. He tried to light it up with a lighter, but nothing happened. So he collected that capsule and the rest of the material and sold to another junkyard owner. Now, this manager later in the evening noticed blue-colored glowing light coming right out of this capsule. It was so beautiful. He took that capsule to his home and showed it to his wife, Maria Gabriela Ferreira. On Monday, September 21st, 1987, a family friend, Mr. Ernesto Fabiano, with his help, they could remove some of the rice grain-sized fragment from the capsule. All the family member applied on their skin as a makeup. But during that week, most of the family members decided to get sick. Having no choice but to check by the local doctors in the hospital, they were all diagnosed with the food poisoning and asked for the bed rest. Now, back in the junkyard, Ferreira's employee, Mr. Israel Batista dos Santos, 22 years old, and 18 years old Admiralson Elvis de Souza, spent a significant amount of time to extract further capsule and the shielding. On 22 of September, Ferreira's brother David Ferreira was called upon to visit his brother's junkyard to show him this beautiful thing, and he gave his brother some of the fragments to take home as gift. Back home, he let his 6-year-old daughter to play with. She put some of the amount of that powder on her face as a makeup, and then later she ate one boiled egg with that bare-handed without any cleaning. Right after 10 minutes, she started to vomit. Following that week, on 25th, his brother, Mr. Ferreira, sold that capsule and the lead to another junkyard owner, Mr. J's Old Iron. By Monday, September 28, Mrs. Ferreira concluded by watching all this situation that whoever contacted this capsule, everyone is getting sick. So she had so many thoughts running to her mind. She rushed back to the junkyard as she was also sick. She collected that capsule and the rest of the material which was along with the capsule. She put in the bag and rushed to the government health surveillance department by taking a local bus. She explained to Dr. Paulo Monteiro that this thing is going to kill us all. And she left that bag and left the hospital. Later, doctor went to another local hospital where he was told that these patients are sick by some kind of radiation. So they contacted the superintendent of HDT, Toxicological Information Center. Upon learning that superintendent had recently spoken with Dr. Monteiro about the suspicious bag, they decided to call a specialist. The state's MAGO appointed Mr. Mendes Walter Ferreira, a licensed physicist. On Tuesday, September 29, Mr. Walter obtained a scintillation detector from the government agency Nuselbras, which uses normally for geological purposes. And they are extremely sensitive. As he went to the location and switched on that meter, it immediately went so crazy to maximum deflection. Seeing this crazy result, he believed the meter is defective. So he went back to the agency. He got another working meter. Upon reaching back to the building location, he switched it on, and second meter reacted in the same manner. They immediately called upon the police and fire brigade at the entrance to prevent people to re-entering the building, while he and Dr. Monteiro went to Mr. Ferreira's junkyard, convinced the workers and the owner to leave the junkyard ASAP for their own safety. Police, fire, and civil defense forces were mobilized, and Olympic Stadium was taken over, isolated, and screened more than 112,000 people. On October 28, 1987, 6 years old, that baby girl who consumed that powder while she was eating the boiled egg and she put on her face as a makeup, she died along with the other patients. But before her death, she lost all of her hair, upper body severely swollen, her kidney, lungs damaged. She was buried in the common cemetery in the Goiânia in a specially built fiberglass coffin lined with the lead to block the effect. The crazy part, that day when officials tried to bury this little girl, the riot of 2,000 gathered around the cemetery tried to prevent her from being buried. They were afraid that her corpses would poison all the surroundings in the land, eventually disbanded by the local authority, of course. On the other hand, the wife of the junkyard owner, Ferreira, and the employee who extracted the lead also died in the same fashion. It turned out Back in 1987, a radiotherapy clinic was built in Parasa Civica, Guinea, which had a population of 700,000 people and located 1,360 kilometers or 850 miles northwest of Rio de Janeiro. In 1985, when the dispute started, among few machines, there were two radiation therapy machines, Cobalt-60, Cesium-137. So this private clinic submitted the request to CNEN, which is Comissão Nacional de Energia Nuclear, or in English, National Nuclear Energy Commission, to transport these machines to the new premises, which contained the Cesium-137. Machine was a Caesar span model F3000 and was designed by the Brazetti and Company of Milan in Italy. And it was built in 1950s, so-called International Standard Capsule that safely contains radioactive material. An organization formed in late 1987 by Mr. Odesson Ferreira stated that after 25 years, approximately 1,600 people had been directly affected and 104 people had died from cancer and other radiations exposures. It took 11 weeks to decontaminate the most contaminated site. 12,500 drums of waste were removed and thrown 20 kilometers or 12.5 miles out of the city. Hostels, restaurants, local transportation, in short, everything had to be checked on a regular basis to avoid any further contamination or issues. The economy was dropped by 40%, and some reports claim that it never fully recovered even to this day. Criminal charges were brought up against the doctors who owned IGR. They were charged with criminal negligence because they had originally been responsible for safeguarding the Cesium-137 capsule. Some doctors were charged with manslaughter, causing bodily harm for diagnosing their patients. And if you remember Chernobyl disaster, which also took place almost the same following years, April 1986, a catastrophic nuclear accident occurred when a botched safety test at the Chernobyl power plant in the Soviet Union led to a reactor core meltdown and explosion, releasing massive amount of radioactive material into the atmosphere, caused immediate loss of life among plants and humans. A massive evacuation over millions of acres of land across Europe resulted hundreds of thousands of deaths, cancer cases, even after decades, abnormal births, zones that has paradoxically became a wildfire sanctuary due to absence of humans. So next time, when you see a blue light or blue glowing light, better run and inform the authorities. That's all for today now. I would love to hear from you. What do you think about this crazy incident from the history? And if you are a fan of the dark, mysterious crime stories, true crime, movie recaps, reactions, please follow me on IG, TikTok, or subscribe to my YouTube channel. And as always, please take care of yourself and your surroundings. And I will see you very soon on the next one. I am Uzair Sipra. Until next time.